right, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to America Now. I'm Barb Adams. I'll be here live with you for all 3 hours tonight. Thanks so much for listening in. Well, as always, I have a diverse and interesting show for you tonight, so I hope you stay for the entire show. But if you do miss any part, you can listen to this or any of my shows in their entirety on my website, radioamericanow.com, under archives. Well, this past week I lost my internet service, and it literally took hours back and forth on the phone with a number of customer, quote, service reps to get to someone who finally understood the situation. They kept telling me that it was on my end. Turned out it was their problem, and that I couldn't go online for help, as the first reps kept telling me, well, just go online. You can get help there. No, I don't have internet. As Americans, we continuously are put on hold as a matter of routine between the Muzak and the automated voices that say, thank you for calling, and tell you how much your business is appreciated. A recent article reported that each of us will spend 1.2 years of our lives on hold. More disconcerting is the fact that corporate America spends 90% of their marketing budgets on getting us to call, while only 6% is spent on customer service. Who knows where the other 4% ends up? It's time for change. Joining me now is author and former statewide prosecutor and Deputy Attorney General of New Jersey, John J. Higgins. Together we form the Nonpartisan Practical Solutions for America. We ask that you join us here on the air and on our new Facebook page to work together to find common ground, discussing and solving the challenges in present-day America. If you'd like to join tonight's discussion, give us a call, 800-259-5791. Again, that's 800-259-5791. And guess what? You won't be put on hold. Hey, John, how you doing?
Good, Barb. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, in spite of all the glitches with internet and everything else and being put on hold. Doing well. You know, John, it's time for corporate interruptus. You came up with that one. I love the term. You know, we need to stop allowing corporate America from controlling our lives in almost every level right now, including making us wait to talk to them. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's like we've gone down this path where efficiencies are supposed to make our lives better. And what has happened is I think the efficiencies have actually made our lives worse. I cringe when something breaks that you have to deal with either a utility or a company, because exactly what you went through is when you get on the phone, you're generally going around and around in a circle listening for about 15 minutes sometimes before you can select to get a representative. Sometimes I feel like if somebody watched me in my house, I'm going, representative, operator, hoping that I can trigger it to get beyond what the normal course of the menu is. Because if I'm calling them, generally I don't have a menu issue. It is an issue that is very specific, and I need to talk to somebody live.
Yeah, that's it exactly, as was my issue. I had already tested my modem, my lines, all these types of things, you know, rebooted, did all the basics that every service representative I first called kept telling me what to do, you know. And you're right, John. It's usually we're at that point, we haven't been able to figure it out, so we need a live person, technical support to actually help us. And nowadays, when you get technical support, as in my situation, it wasn't even the support I was asking for. I mean, most of these people I had, one of them actually suggest, well, why don't you take your entire system, unplug it from whatever, you know, little plug you've got there in that room, move it to another room, because, get this, if it's the modem, it'll work in another room. And I'm thinking, it's still the same phone line, and that's not exactly a convenient way of doing this. You know, it's like, really? Are these people no longer trained?
Well, I think that's exactly it. Sometimes it's a training issue, and unless I have found that unless I'm speaking to somebody who either has the authority or the knowledge or the wherewithal for what I'm trying to deal with, it gets very frustrating, because sometimes you're explaining the exact same problem to 5 people before they get you to the person who may be able to help you. And, of course, I think that just adds to more frustration and uncivility or incivility as the conversation goes on. So when you finally get the person who can really help you, you're a little bit on the burned out side and aggravated side, and sometimes I know for myself I will take that out on the person, and I've really had to teach myself not to do that, because if anybody's going to help me, that's the person I need.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to admit now I'm a very, very stable person. I usually am very civil with everybody, and I was that way for the first 3 to 4 people until I got to the absolute person who just sent me over the edge with the lunacy of the whole thing. I kept asking for the supervisors, and I finally got to the supervisor who, when I asked a question about finally getting a refund once we had finished diagnosing, it was their problem on their end. One of their ports was down. I happened to be on that port. Guess what? It was an outage in my area. You know, it had taken literally 5-6 hours or more to get to this point. And when I asked if I could be at least given back money for the time I'm down, I've lost my internet, and I went out and even bought a new modem per one of their representatives telling me, well, you need a new modem. So I thought, I'll try it. Yeah, and the supervisor, the person under me said, well, you know, I can't give you that authority. It's the supervisor. So I finally got to the supervisor, and the supervisor said, well, I don't have the authority to do that. And I'm going, who does? She said, well, that's a supervisory problem. And I'm thinking, but you're the supervisor. You know, and at that point, it became total lunacy. It was like, I don't know what to do. You know, so finally just, rather than get upset with someone, hang up. Just hang up. Give up.
Right. But now what that's done now, it's made you very frustrated with that company. You really don't like that company any longer, right, which is really so counterproductive from the company's viewpoint, if you think about it. I mean, you know, years ago, before we had all of these mergers and acquisitions and these companies getting bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more diverse, so they don't need any specific product line or service line, they're really not so keen on providing you service, other than to get you hooked up into it. I mean, they're like the I don't like to pick on my own gender, but you know, it's like you're on the date, you'll sell the girl anything you want, you know, to get her to go home with you. You know, yeah. But after that, you know, it's like, wow, I want the next one. And that's exactly what this whole thing has become. Like, you know, the phone companies were keen years past of getting you to switch from one company to the other. Lord knows how many times I was getting my mother out of whatever deal she couldn't hear, and she got herself into more and more screwy deals. And, you know, you've got to deal with all of these things with that in mind, that once they have you, that you may or may not be able to get free of them. I mean, right. I know out here in Jersey we have horror stories of some people with cable companies. You can't get anybody live. Once you're in, you can't get out. You know, it's really a mess. From my own viewpoint, like I have a DSL line at my house. About 15 years ago, there was a question on the ballot in November about giving the local phone company here. I don't know whether it was a specific cash amount that the government was borrowing to give them, or it was a tax benefit they were giving them for years, that they were going to run fiber optics throughout the entire state. Well, as time goes on, there's areas they don't think are profitable. We gave them the money, but now they're not running the rest of the optics. It's all sell, and once they've got you, well, sorry, Charlie. Can't provide that for you now. All right, America Now will return with John Higgins here, and we'll be discussing more about corporate interruptus. Stay with us. All right, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to America Now. My guest this hour, actually not my guest, my co-host this hour, John Higgins, and we're talking corporate interruptus. And John, you know, you were mentioning those changes in terms of services when we sign up for things, you know, like some of the cable companies. I know Comcast, I shouldn't name them, but, you know, I've heard horror stories about them. You know, but the banks, debit cards, credit cards, you know, all of these, they get you to sign in with them, and then you have to sign these terms of agreement, which who knows what they say, pages of tiny fine print. You have to agree to it, and it's really hard to sometimes, one, get the service you deserve and thought you were getting, let alone try to even get out of it sometimes. Well, I can use the example of I had a bank account with a small bank that was called Princeton Trust. There were like branches in New Brunswick. I was at school at Rutgers College, and then probably in Princeton there might be in another branch, or maybe one other. They were a relatively small bank, easy to deal with. It was free checking, all of that. Then it was bought by Horizon. I don't know who they were, where they came from, or where they went to after. Then there was Chemical, and now it's finally PNC. So the problem is that your money is sitting in there, and these other companies buy it out, and then you now are either you live with what it is now, or you have to go to another bank and I'm going to say negotiate, but there's really no negotiation from your side at all. In terms of law, we call those contracts of adhesion, which years ago they were throwing them out. In other words, because you can't have that much fine print, and since you can't negotiate with it, you can't do anything draconian to the person who's in the deal. But as time goes on, I have to say again, members of my profession, I think they work for these companies trying to find another way of getting you. And, every time you turn around, every time I see a notice that I get from the bank or a credit card or the utilities, not so much, but sometimes there's a change in service. And what can you do to object to it? If your bank, you can remove your money, or if it's a credit card company, you can stop making any other charges, and I think you may be able to hold on to the old terms. But I don't know of anything in the world where, you and I make some kind of arrangement that as we're going along, I go, you know what, I don't like the way the deal is that I've got to do for you, so I'm going to change it. Yeah, and that's basically it. And, you're talking about all these things, too, and I'm thinking mortgages. How many times, my house now is going to be just not quite 9 years old, but in the time I've owned it, I've had 3 different mortgage companies, right. And that's not because of me. That's because the one I began with, that got sold, and then it got sold again within another year and a half. It's like, and do I have a say in this? No. You get a notice at the end of the day, but if you think just historically, and I'm not talking ancient history, I'm talking the last 10 or 15 years, that's how all those credit default swaps started. Yep. Because all of a sudden they were sending these packages of mortgages all around, some that were good notes, some that really weren't so good notes, and they were even pulling the stunts on one another or the investors. I mean, it's like a swirling mass or a swamp where the thing keeps changing, but the thing of it is that somebody is always trying to get over on somebody. I don't know where we lost in this country the idea of being straightforward, fair dealing, and sticking to your word. It's like gone. I live in a state where, we got a governor, he changed the pension system, bragged about it when he has to come up with his side of it. Now all of a sudden he's got to change it again. I mean, this is not leadership. This is, to me, when I give my word to somebody about doing something, I consider that, a promise that has to be carried out, even if it harms me over the long term. Exactly. I agree with you, John. Whatever happened with give your word or a handshake or any of those types of things? I mean, it just doesn't seem to mean much in this country anymore. It's really sad. Integrity. All of these things seem to be going down. People use the words, and they'll gladly use them and give you that handshake and look you in the eye with the big, shiny, sparkly smile and go, oh, glad to have you joining our bank or this or that. And they don't mean it. You can read the energy and feel it. It's like, wow, really? It's sad. And when you finally do find someone, I've recently transferred to a smaller, more local bank from a big national bank because I wasn't getting the service there. And the smaller ones so far actually seems to know how to conduct business. And they know my name, even though I haven't been with them all that long. Wow, what a novel idea. And if you think about it, I mean, I keep going back to this. When the Founding Fathers did all of this, this is the way businesses were run. It wasn't this corporate greed of trying to get over on people. People were trying to be straightforward and honest, and they believed in what they said, and they knew they could count on what the other guy was going to do for them. I remember when I was growing up, you even had doctors would come to your house in the middle of the night if you were really sick. That's all gone. So I don't know that any of this has really improved. This whole thing with this efficiency that they get to where, they get rid of employees so that they have some system that works where they don't need one has really been harming our, level of living,
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle, John, because the more we get frustrated and get angry, that lowers everything. Because then we start expecting it to be that way. I mean, honestly, as soon as you pick up the phone, don't you kind of just brace when you know you have to call that utility company or like my internet company? I just start bracing, knowing, okay, here we go through the at least, how many minutes on hold am I going to be? And who am I going to get? Will I be able to speak with them? Will they even understand me? That whole routine. You're just already in that frame of mind, which is not positive for doing good business.
Right. And so by the end of the day, your stomach is in a knot. You panic when something breaks because you don't know whether you're going to get any decent response. And on the same token, I do feel sorry many times for the employees on the other side. I don't know if you have them out there, but, in New Jersey here, we're now moving towards self-checkouts.
Oh, yeah, we have lots of them here, yeah.
And go through that line. And nobody really knows how to do it. And they have some poor cashier sometimes available to help you get through it. And the one time I saw the one guy, he came over and I said, I'm not doing this. I need to go through the normal checkout line. Because, first of all, I don't want them to get rid of the job. I want a real human being there. Because if there's something wrong with the machine, I don't want to be overcharged, And I don't want to be accused of stealing something either, because it could go either way in that kind of scenario.
I hear you. We're heading to a break here, but I have to tell you, I actually was in one of those a couple of nights ago, and I can't even wear watches. There's something about my human electrical system that kind of fritzes out other things. So self-checkouts, they don't mesh really well with me. So, all right, we will continue this talk here on America Now after the break. Stay with us. All right, everybody, welcome back. You're listening to America Now. Barb Allen's here and John Higgins as well. We are talking corporate interruptus. And, John, right before the break, you were talking about those self-checkout lines. Almost all of our stores now, I mean, they have more of those than they do regular checkers anymore. And it's really hard because, yeah, you're right. You can get behind people that don't know what they're doing with them. Or like me, a couple of nights ago, I went up to it begrudgingly because there were such long lines and even just the quick lines. I just had a few items, and sure enough, I don't know if I put the energy out there or what. I walk up to it, and I go to scan my item, and the thing just goes beep, 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 beep. And it's like the whole thing just fritzes out, and it's like, oh, and everybody's looking at you like, oh, man. But you're right. It's like we're supposed to live in this automated world, but it's so frustrating when it doesn't work. And so many times it just doesn't work.
Right, and the thing of it is that, when you have a checkout person at a cashier, they know when they pick up a product where the scan code is on it because they're doing it all day long. You or I walk in there, I'm not sure where the scan code is on a package, and then Lord help you have a big package. Then what do you do with that? You got to lug the thing up and try to hold it up and wave it in front. But the other thing I will say, and this is from my prosecutorial experiences, that lays everything wide open for all kinds of credit card and debit card fraud because there's nobody checking whose number is being used for that. It makes a heyday for these credit card rings. They can take a gift card, put all your information on there, and then take that and run that through there. Who's going to check? Who's going to know that, the 300-pound, 50-year-old male is not Barb Adams?
Yes, certainly not. But you're right. Yeah, I had a friend that had that happen recently. She filled up at a gas station that she's been filling up at, for some time, puts her card in, and boom. By the next day, she had all these charges showing up that weren't hers. Fortunately, she's a very bright person. She checks all these things constantly, You know, and that's the thing. You have to be so alert and constantly checking your bank accounts, checking your utility accounts. I mean, all of these things. We spend so much time on hold even doing these types of things just to make sure we're not getting taken. And unfortunately, we're all getting taken in the end.
So what I would say that for all the supposed efficiency, it really is backfiring over the long term. And look, if you get an illegal charge against you, they can only go after you for $50 if you find it, of course. But, you know, so the banks and the credit cards basically just swallow that because they figure it's a cost of doing business, and they probably have to have more employees or whatever to do that. But do you really think that the banks or the credit cards are really absorbing that cost? Who are they passing that cost along to?
Exactly.
Us.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, so the corporate profits keep rising. They have less employees, less efficiencies, and I don't know what happened with you when the banks came out with the ATMs, but that was going to be the next great thing that was going to save for all of us and whatever. So now they have less and less employees at the banks. Did the banks make any of the deals better for us? I don't know about you, but I pay more in fees than what I did then, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And now, you know, with my new iPhone, I've got the iPhone 6, I can do Apple Pay. Like heck, I'm not going to try it. I mean, there's enough stuff going wrong with all the automated things, let alone paying my bills or walking into a store just with my phone. Sounds great in theory, but again, all these things, you know, there's always something coming up where down the road we find out, oh yeah, 110 million people just got hacked into this way or that way. I mean, it's a weekly thing.
Well, I know that I don't even need to go to the bank any longer to cash a check or deposit the check. I can supposedly take a picture of it. And I'm like, do I really want to get my phone? The portable thing that I carry around with me that can get stolen or lost with that kind of capability and into the hands if I lose it or somebody steals it from me. Because let me tell you, they can figure out exactly how to make that operate, and then they clean out your bank account. I don't know that there's enough safeties and protections for that.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And there aren't enough safeties and protections on all of these things. And yet we're being pushed further and further down those roads. You know, and it's not just in the banks and all of these things, you know, everybody trying to sell us stuff. We're being sold, like, you know, you and I have talked about before, insurance policies and things along those lines. I mean, they're just constantly overselling you on all of these types of things.
Well, I don't know. The insurance companies are always a company that, if you want to get my hackles up, it's a bank or an insurance company. Happens real quick with me. It's the only kind of deal that you go and you pay them money, and it seems to be that their business model is to try to stop you from collecting. So all the hoops you have to jump through with an insurance claim a lot of times are nightmarish. And then there's other systems where they have kind of taken over and dominated. In New Jersey, the workman's comp system, I have to tell you, because I've seen my brother and sister go through it. It killed my sister. That entire system is broken. And you know what? The politicians don't do anything to straighten it out. They're running around looking for fraud of the people who are on it, but they don't hold the companies accountable, and they don't get treated. And that was the trade-off in the workman's comp world, was that you couldn't sue the company if you got hurt at work because the company was supposed to take care of your health right away. Now they delay, and then they say you can't sue them, so you really have no options.
Yeah, that's a real problem. And it's if the company even offers any kind of health care anymore. So many of them don't even offer any benefits anymore. You know, and most people, you know, if you can get the full-time job, good luck.
Oh, this isn't even this. This is you get hurt on the job. You know, you get people walking around. I hear them all the time. Well, if I got hurt on the job, I'm going to make all kinds of money. It's like, oh, no. They're going to kill you. You're not even going to get treated because they're going to send you to doctors that they pay to tell you that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I've gone through that personally with my sister. I've seen them do it. So the thing here is that system is broken. And, yes, this privatization and whatever was the companies were supposed to provide health care. I know people today are complaining about Obamacare because we keep going around on that. But at least there's some kind of coverage for people. I say that we have to get the private insurance companies out of it because you shouldn't be making profit off a governmentally mandated program.
Right.
Today on Facebook, I got into a little bit of a tizzy with somebody, and I didn't respond, but it was like, well, we need to just let all the private insurance companies do it, get rid of Medicaid, Medicare, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, we tried that, and it failed. You and I were paying for the people who weren't getting coverage because they ended up in the emergency room in the hospitals.
Yeah. And bottom line is, guess who always ends up paying? It's the ones of us who can least usually afford it, because we've been giving our money for all of these different reasons to cover all of these different companies for so many different reasons. And it's gotten to the point the middle class is just about plumb out of money.
And this is what corporate welfare really is about, is they switch the costs of what they should be paying or what they paid in the past over into the public sector. And it's always in a crisis kind of place that it ends up that you have to, cover those costs, which is absolutely and fundamentally unfair. And, again, I go back to us being Americans. Since when do we walk by somebody laying on the street that's harmed or bleeding or whatever? We don't take care of our own. I don't know. That's not the country that I'm used to.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this plenty in private, John. Where's America? This isn't quite the America that we thought we were supposed to be living in. This is not the American dream, the American experiment as we knew it. All right, we will continue this discussion here on America Now. Stay with us. All righty, everybody, you're listening to America Now. John Higgins joining me here this hour, and we are talking about America on hold. And, John, maybe it's time we talk about some practical solutions to try to help people out here, because I know it's hard when you're out there and you're in this endless loop on hold, trying to get to someone to talk to. For me, when I was trying to get through on the Internet, ask for the supervisor. I did that with just about everybody I spoke to. When I wasn't satisfied with the answers I was getting, ask for your supervisor. And if you don't like the supervisor, keep trying. Or hang up, call back again.
Right. And the other thing that I would say, because there's a part of me that feels very sorry for those employees. I don't think that they're doing this all on their own. They're probably overworked, underpaid, and, half the colleagues that they started with are long gone, so they're harried in their own way. So I try not to take it out on them if I can avoid that, because I'm sure that they are not in a very pleasant position themselves. Like your supervisor said, that's a supervisory issue, doesn't even realize that she is in the supervisory position. Yeah. And that's not because she's trying to be cruel or mean to you. It's that she probably doesn't have the power or the authority. And
I saw an article recently, John, that was talking about that situation, like call centers when you get somebody. Those people are they're making minimum wage if they're in this country. And, at that rate, they're probably making about $16,000 plus a year. Hardly enough to live on, that's for sure. And you're right, it's not their problem, it's not their fault, and they're not being trained for it. But when you consider the ones at the top, I saw something like the chairman of Goldman Sachs make $16,000 plus an hour. An hour.
Oh, yeah. No,
wow, what inequality here.
Well, to me, and to play golf and to associate with his other buddies who were, fellow CEOs, those guys particularly ran the entire United States economy into the ground, and none of them have paid any penalty. They still got their bonuses, maybe not for that 1 year, but I'm sure they've made up whatever that shortage is. So it's really fundamentally unfair, and those employees are not getting the benefit of any of that. And so the thing of it is, you can't get to the CEO to do the complaint. So they don't even hear it. They're so well insulated against all of this. So then you're stuck having to find another means of getting at them. One of the advantages, believe it or not, of governmental kind of agencies is that you can exert some political pressure on them because every year they have an annual budget. So when you have a problem with a governmental agency, you can complain to your state senator or your assemblyman or write to the governor's office or the attorney general's office, and somebody will look at that because they do need your vote. The problem with corporations, there are no votes.
Yeah.
The most it is what money you pay them for the service that you may get from them. And as our society is getting more and more monopolized by a lot of these big companies, what other choice do you have but to buy the service through them?
Yeah, you don't really. What about consumer protection services and agencies, John? Do you know much about those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those also are a powerful thing if you can get them activated. A lot of them won't get activated. I'll give you an example. Years ago, my mom, who couldn't hear, remember I told you that, somebody called her, and she liked AT&T. That's what we had back in those days. And they told them they were I don't know, like a jobber or a supplier that was reselling AT&T lines. So my mother said, "Oh, I love AT&T." And so she signs up for this service, and they switch her phone company. So I, of course, find out what's going on because now everything's all gone downhill. And so what I did was that not only did I complain to the Consumer Affairs Agency in my state, I found what state that business was incorporated in, and I complained to them, and they happened to be in Tennessee. New Jersey, my state, did nothing. Tennessee really went after them, and we got the situation resolved. So sometimes you have to be a little bit more thoughtful about what you're doing.
But again, look how much extra time you had to spend, routing all that out and just figuring out, okay, what do I need to do here, there, and there. Most people, their lives are so busy, let alone to be put on hold, then have something like that happen where you get in with something and you need to get it changed or fixed or whatever. It's usually easier, and I believe I saw another statistic somewhere here recently from a marketing research group that said basically a full third of people will just give up. They just give up. If you're on hold, they hang up. They just give up. They let the money go. In the case such as like with your mother or whatever, they just say, "Oh, to heck with it. It's not worth battling it." And I think that's where, again, we're all being taken.
Well, I think that in many ways we're in a place in society where I don't want to militarize it, but in many ways we're like soldiers for change. And if we want to change something, rewarding bad behavior will allow bad behavior to continue. So for me, what happens is when something is unfair like this and it goes, I almost change modes in my mind, and it's like, well, then I'm going to become a pain in your whatever. So I'm not going to give up until I get some kind of satisfaction on this. And I think the more that we do that, they will not be rewarded for doing these bad behaviors.
Yeah, the old we're mad as heck and we're not going to take it anymore. And that's true. You do have to get that way. And I finally have learned that. I used to be kind of the type where if they told me it was one way or another, I figured, well, they must know. So I just kind of would give up. That was quite some time back. I finally figured out that I wasn't doing myself any favors. If I had to get something done, I needed to take care of me. So I learned to stand up for myself, and you're right. Sometimes that squeaky wheel, you just have to be that squeaky wheel because you will get the oil finally. Someone somewhere will finally listen to you, and you'll get what you need. It may take a long time, but it's worth it. And you're right. We do all need to stand up and say, enough's enough. We've had enough of this kind of stuff. And I think business. We keep trying to lump it all like on corporate America, but in many ways, they're not benefiting from this either. I mean, they do in a certain respect, but not really, because I think there's a lot of people out there that really do want things to run more smoothly in this country, and we've got all these different facets kind of broken and off track, and everybody's trying to fix it. And I think if we would all join forces and all be Americans and start working together for practical solutions, we could come up with some pretty doggone good ones, because the bottom line is we still are all Americans.
Absolutely. And, everybody will tout, that small businesses are the backbone of the country, which seem to be dying off. But, a small business doesn't operate like this. That's been always the advantage of a small type business, because you'd see the owner, they're responsible. They're trying to make a living. So they're trying to be helpful to you. It's as soon as this insulation starts, where they're 5 steps removed from dealing with the customers or doing the work themselves, that we start getting into problems. And then these people that have they have no real investment in it because they're getting paid one way or the other. It's the guys that are really struggling and trying to make a name for themselves and trying to do some kind of product and service and give you the best that they can is who we should be trying to promote and give money to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's a matter of respect, going back to the honest way of doing business. You know, and like I said, when I went to the smaller bank, it's wonderful. I walk in and people know my name. They greet you. They say hello. It makes you feel like, you know, you're worthy of, you know, they want your business. They actually respect you for putting your money in there.
Right, and they should be thankful that you're willing to do that.
Yeah.
They'll work with you. It's not this thing that, you know, you're stuck in the endless loop of trying to get a hold of one of them, you know?
Yeah, well, here's hoping that things do change and for the better, and I think they will. You know, I'm always the optimist, that I think that, you know, if we get to a certain point and we start keep hitting this brick wall enough and enough people are fed up, things will change, and hopefully they will change for the better and quickly.
Absolutely, and like you said, it's a squeaky wheel that will get oiled. So the more that people do complain if they're not being treated fairly, there's no reason for us to put up with being treated unfairly in this country. You know, we need to have respect for one another and to help one another. Again, I say this all the time. This is an experiment. This isn't something that's guaranteed. Liberty's not guaranteed. And we're all in this boat together. We need to pull together and look out for one another. This thing of trying to get over on one another is just not the American way.
No, it's not. All right. More from John and I in the future here with Practical Solutions for America. Check us out on Facebook as well. All right. America Now continues.